Helping us shine a little light on that is Utah Representative John Curtis, representing Utah's 3rd Congressional District. And he joins us on the line from Washington, D.C. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Boyd. As you know, it's always a delight to be with you.
You have introduced a bill to do just that, to shine some light in terms of what's going on, in particular around a UN program that has come under great scrutiny just in the last few days in terms of some of the things that were taking place that were actually part of that Hamas attack on Israel. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you. And you're right. This was something that even as a member of Congress, I didn't know was going on. It's the UNRWA division of the United Nations. And we found out that 10% of the Hamas people who were participating in October 7th were actually on the UN payroll. And almost half of them on the UN payroll had friends and relatives that were part of Hamas, funded largely by the United States through the United Nations, which is it's just wrong on every level.
Yeah, and so as you break that down, let's unpack that just a little bit. So let's start with what this is. It's the UNRWA, which is the UN Relief Work Agency. So tell us a little bit about, one, what that does, and then what the U.S. Involvement in terms of really supporting it from taxpayer dollars is the big thing.
Yeah, and to your point, this was created with very good intentions, as I understand it, clear back in the 60s to help Palestinian refugees after the 67 war. Great intentions, and probably needed at the time. But it's still alive today, and not just those refugees from the 60s, but their children and their children and their grandchildren are now participating in this. It's a major cost, part of the United Nations, and clearly run amok, as we saw with the Hamas participation in it. And it's a really good example, Boyd, of the lack of transparency of the UN. Who knew that this was going on, and how many agencies under the UN umbrella are participating in things that are likewise way out of date or out of line with U.S. values.
Yeah, and so let's go down what the bill actually does in terms of kind of this ranking system or this transparency system that would really do two things. One, I think it would expose the what is happening, but then also not all of those agencies are created equal in terms of priority and U.S. interests.
Exactly. So the bill really just forces the State Department to rank all of their agencies and state how vital they are to U.S. interests, so that we can all look at that ranking. And sometimes we hear defund the whole UN. There's good and bad in the UN, and I'll just point out the Security Council, for instance. I think it's really important for the U.S. to have a seat on the Security Council because our voice is heard. But that doesn't mean all of these agencies, within the UN are good or even in the U.S. best interest or aligned with U.S. values. And so this forces the State Department to actually rank them and then state what value they bring to the United States.
And I love the fact that you bring up, we so often get that false choice of it's either,
Right.
defund, dismantle the UN, do it by Friday. This gives us a much more measured, reasonable, rational approach. Where should our attention really be? And what are those highest, best uses in terms of U.S. involvement?
Well, I'll point again to the Security Council. If we're not there, if we don't have a seat on that, we give veto power to Russia and to China, and we can't let that happen. We have to be part of those international discussions. And I think that's one of the ones that stands out that most people are aware of and would give some people some discomfort if we just totally collapsed the UN and pulled out of it. And yet, I can give you all these examples. Let me click a couple off. For instance, think about this. Iran and North Korea preside over the UN Conference on Disarmament. You see any problem with that? Or that Cuba and Russia and Saudi Arabia and Nigeria are members of the Human Rights Council. And I mean, you can go through the UN over and over these things that just make no sense. And I think another really important point is the UN has been disproportionately attacking two of our best allies, Taiwan and Israel. And it's just not right. And so by forcing them to rank these, we can then start. Let's just go to the bottom to start and say, okay, don't need that one, don't need this one, don't need this one. And I think that when America really sees what the UN is, and most people really don't have a clear vision of it, I think it'll be very clear what we want to fund and what we don't want to fund.
Yeah. I actually just had an idea that we should do this in every organization and every
Yeah.
agency of government. Let's just go through and just rank it all. What's the real leverage point? And let's just start lopping stuff off at the bottom.
Exactly. Right. Which does away with the argument of there is some good there. It's, okay, fine. We'll get to that, but here's an easy place to start.
Yeah, definitely. So give us the process pieces. What does this look like moving forward in terms of the House side?
Well, I think it's going to find a very favorable environment here in the House. The climate is very good for it, and I would certainly hope that we would have some bipartisan support after this. As you mentioned, the UNRWA is the way they call it with the Palestinians. And if we can do that, not only can we get a vote on the House floor, I think we can move it over to the Senate. And then, as you know, the process is if this is a bill, like, it's hard to oppose, right? Like, how would you justify opposing this bill? And the Republican or Democrat, I think, should like this bill. And the recent involvement there with Hamas, I think, is going to prompt some bipartisan support.
Yeah, great perspective, great insight, and again, a great example of this is how you start moving things done without just going to the polar extremes of everything, all or nothing, fake fights, false choices. This is how we start to have different kinds of conversations in Washington, D.C. Representative John Curtis, this is a great bill. This is an important discussion. As we started the segment, the road to really bad places is paved with good intentions. I think there are some good intentions and some good leverage in terms of the UN and a whole lot of things that we ought to be evaluating, reevaluating, and potentially eliminating. Great perspective. We'll keep an eye on this one.
Thanks, Blake.
All right. Again, that's Representative John Curtis joining us live from our nation's capital today. And it's so important for us to keep that in perspective. So here you have an organization, as Representative Curtis pointed out, founded under really good intentions, helping refugees, helping Palestinians in particular. And then over time, things tend to run amok. And, who would think that something that was designed to be helpful and the world helping suddenly becomes a place where those involved in atrocities and the horrific attacks of October 7th were actually on the payroll. We're actually being funded by. And so we always have to do that. And it is, when I jokingly said we should do this kind of prioritization, which the bill that Representative Curtis has introduced would force the State Department to go through and evaluate everything that we're helping to fund in the UN. And should we be funding a human rights commission or committee that's being overseen by places like Cuba and Russia and Saudi Arabia? Or that we've got North Korea dealing with global weapons. All of those things are just head scratchers to me. And so having this kind of conversation, starting a process and creating transparency is how you start better conversations. So it's not just let's get entirely rid of the UN. Some people feel that, and that's fine. Are there places where it's important and high leverage for the U.S. and in the U.S. interest? Yeah, of course. And so let's have the conversation. Let's get rid of those things that are clearly not being helpful, where there's waste, fraud, and abuse. And heaven forbid, let's get rid of all of these places where your tax dollars are going inside of a UN agency that is then funding the very people who are carrying out atrocities. Not allowed, not acceptable. And so we have to start the conversation. So we'll continue to watch this from Representative John Curtis. An important bill in terms of evaluating and looking at where are we really, because if we don't stop and do the assessment and we just kick it back into gear, we're going to end up with the same kind of results. That's how it plays out. So an important discussion, an important bill filed by Representative John Curtis. We'll track that one as it works its way through the House and on over to the Senate. More Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. The political accusations will only get louder.
Stop the invasion of our southern border.
He doesn't want us to solve the border problem because he wants to blame Biden for it.
The world around us will only become more divided. With more conflict come key decisions about news stories and the facts. That's why we choose our words carefully at KSL, ask better questions, and leave the conclusions to you. The stakes are higher, and we have you covered at KSL News Radio.
Have you heard of IRS Tax Code Section 1.408A-4? It sounds complicated, but it's a simple tax law thousands of Utah families are using to lock in lower tax bills when they retire. If you've saved at least $200,000 for retirement, and some of this money is in an IRA or 401k, it could save you tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in future tax bills. You can find out how much you could save by requesting a free and confidential retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions, a 5-time winner of Utah's Best of State Award. For your free retirement tax analysis, call 801-896-9622. 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Don't let this warm weather fool you. We still got a lot of cold nights ahead of us. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you haven't scheduled your annual furnace tune-up yet, I got some good news for you. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Tuesday, January 30th, and mention you heard this ad, we'll give you $95 off and tune up your furnace for only $29. You won't hear this ad tomorrow, so call Any Hour Services right now to schedule. 801-443-7400. A furnace tune-up is the least expensive way to extend the life of your furnace and avoid unexpected breakdowns. And our technicians service all brands. 801-443-7400. If it's more convenient, go to anyhourservices.com and look for the red button that says Book Online. Schedule your $29 tune-up there. That's a $124 value for only $29 if you get a hold of Any Hour Services today. Call 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language, like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
Babbel.
Babbel. Go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's BABBEL.com.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language, like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
Babbel.
Babbel. Go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's BABBEL.com.
Join KSL in the movie show this Friday from 10 to 1 at the Salt Lake NPS store, 1600 Empire Road in Salt Lake City, npsstore.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Thomas. First, a suspect has been arrested in the murder of a massage parlor employee in Midvale. Second, a search underway for a missing woman in American Fork Canyon. And third, an Amtrak train hit a milk truck and derailed in Colorado. Right now, 49 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, the rage from the reason portion of the program sometimes getting pretty complicated these days, especially when it comes to the border security, immigration. And so we want to get underneath some of the headlines, some of the shouting matches and talking points, and all the things I'm sure you've seen in your email box from fundraisers trying to get some campaign cash or to mount a political campaign off of. And so, as always, we turn to Alexander Bolton, the reporter at The Hill. Always has such great depth and insight, someone we always look to help us kind of divide the rage from the reason in terms of what's really going on. And, Alexander, welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot for inviting me on.
So let's dig in terms of we're still waiting for bill text. A lot of my sources were saying we were going to get that yesterday. It seems like we're still just a little slow. What are you hearing in terms of the bill text on the Senate side?
Well, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer just gave an update on the Senate floor and said that the negotiators are very, very close to finalizing the deal, but they're not there yet. And he urged his colleagues to tune out the noise and keep focused on the task at hand, which is finalizing this deal. When he says tune out the noise, he's talking about former President Trump, who is calling on Republicans to abandon this deal. Trump says that this deal would be a bad deal, and he says that he doesn't need action from Congress to secure the border if he's elected. He wants to run on the issue. Now, the negotiators have a deal. They have the framework worked out. That was something that Chris Murphy, the lead Democratic negotiator, announced over the weekend. There is a deal, but it's very complex, the legislation, the policy. So actually getting it all drafted is taking up quite a bit of time. And we saw that when Congress passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill in 2021, or whenever it was, I don't remember precisely. But basically, after the deal was struck, it still took about a month to draft the legislation because it was so complex.
Yeah, and that's an important thing. The legislative text, it's one thing to get the framework of the deal. Getting it into the legislative text is where the sausage gets made, and all those words have meaning, and the meaning matters, and so all of that gets really interesting. And so as you look at this playing out, obviously the former president weighing in, that's clearly political purposes. President Biden is saying, hey, give me that power to shut down the border. I'll use it. So a little tone in terms of the politics of all of that. And I'm still one of those who believes that we could solve most of this in an afternoon because everybody agrees. But the political point scoring, as always, seems to be getting in the way of the good policy that would solve the problem when it comes to the border and immigration.
Well, I thought what was interesting today is that, President Biden said, I've done everything I can on the border, saying that he needs more authority from Congress to address the huge surge of migrants. Now, that was something that was, called out angrily by Senate Republicans who, like Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, who said that, Biden does have authority to do more. He just isn't willing to use it. So there's certainly posturing on both sides. Trump, when he was president in 2019, he called on Congress to give him more authority so that he could keep migrants out of the country. Now he's saying that the president doesn't need more authority from Congress. He can do it on its own. So we're seeing a lot of posturing on both sides. And so, when we'll see the text exactly, I'm betting later in the week. But, what's been going on here is the deadline keeps on getting, punted further down the road.
Yeah, and in that punting, of course, this has been connected with aid to Ukraine and Israel and even Taiwan to a lesser extent. Give us some sense in terms of how that is moving forward. I know Mitch McConnell and Speaker of the House Johnson have really different versions or views in terms of how this should move forward. McConnell seems to be making a bet that if the Senate can pass it with some bipartisan support, that it might create a different pressure point in terms of what happens in the House.
Well, I think McConnell's in a tough position here because Mike Johnson, the Speaker, has really changed his criteria for passing funding for Ukraine. I mean, he has insisted that any money for Ukraine would have to include some border security provisions. That's what the Senate negotiators have been working on now for a couple of months, and they're going to come out with some reforms that at least the Republicans who are familiar with it in the leadership say that these are some significant concessions. We're already seeing pushback from Democratic liberals and from immigrant advocates saying that these are some of the powers that Trump craved when he was in president. So, these are, this certainly represents progress in terms of, securing the border. That's exactly what Mike Johnson asked for. And now he says that, this bill, if it comes over to the House, is dead on arrival. So, I mean, what is Leader McConnell to do? Well, I think he's just right now staying the course, and they're going to produce this deal and then try to sell it to the party as being strong progress in terms of securing the border. But the problem is that Donald Trump, who has such an iron grip on the party, is pretty much drowning everybody out. He hasn't even seen the deal yet. He says it's a terrible deal. So that seems to be what counts now in the Republican Party. If Donald Trump says something, most people fall in the line, Republicans, that is.
Yeah, give me some sense. One of the things that I know the last time I did some of these larger bills, they would often spend several weeks in the markup process in committee hearings, and here we're clearly going to do a short circuit of that in terms of what's been negotiated, as you mentioned, with Senator Murphy, Democrat, Senator Langford representing the Republicans. Give us a sense in terms of, is that going to give people enough time to get through the text in a way that they can say, okay, I've been able to read it and at least vet it, so now I can vote one way or the other?
Well, I was there in 2013 when the Judiciary Committee spent a month marking up, a much broader bill, I'd say. The 2013 Comprehensive Immigration Bill included E-Verify, penalties for employers for employing illegal immigrants, a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people, something to deal with the Dreamers, the DACA folks. So, that was a huge bill back then. This is much more narrow. This is just focused on border security, which is what the Republicans have always wanted. Now, does it give them everything they want on border security? No, but it certainly gives them more than they had before. And are there concessions? Okay, there are a few concessions. There's 50,000 green cards annually. There is an expedited pathway to get work permits, but you could argue that when there's a labor shortage in this country right now, it's not the worst thing in the world to get more work permits going. But to answer your question, is there enough time to vet this? We'll see. We haven't even seen the text yet. So it is very complicated. I guarantee you this, once the bill comes out, the critics are saying that, they haven't had enough time to review that. And so Mike Lee has been at the forefront saying that we need at least 3 weeks to review this bill because it's so complicated. He's not going to get 3 weeks, but he might get 4 days. So he'll have to. They'll be working overnight to understand this legislation.
For sure, I still have some gray hairs from the 2013 markup, so that was a long process for sure. Great stuff, great perspective. Anything else that we should keep our eye on in the days ahead? Anything that you're watching and saying, okay, this might be a tipping point kind of moment for it?
Well, I'm what I'm writing about today is the impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. So I think what's kind of an interesting dynamic here is that, this deal was negotiated with Alejandro Mayorkas in the Senate, and now in the House, they're, moving ahead to impeach him. So you really have the Senate Republican leadership and the House Republican leadership moving in opposite directions. And so I think it really kind of shows the tension in the Republican Party right now. There's a lot of division and just different visions as to where the party should go.
Yeah, no question. Great insight, great perspective as always. Alexander Bolton, reporter at The Hill, thehill.com. You can always check out his work there. Alexander, thanks so much for joining us today. Great stuff.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Alexander Bolton from The Hill. And complex, complicated, a lot of things to go through. We'll continue to watch to see when that bill text becomes available, what the words actually say, what the meaning actually is, and how that will play out in both the Senate and the House. It's got a long way to go, but it's an important one that we actually have to get done. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour: a suspect in the murder of a woman at a massage parlor in Midvale has been arrested in California. Stephen Chance Brinkerhoff now facing a murder charge in the death of Yuping Zhao, whose body was found at A-Plus Massage on State Street. Salt Lake County District Attorney says police linked Brinkerhoff to the crime using forensic evidence as well as text message records. A person driving drunk who killed someone in a crash would spend a minimum of 5 years in prison under a bill in the Utah legislature. KSL legal analyst Greg Skordas tells Dave and Dujanovic the parole board was designed to look at all the factors involved in a sentence, and they would be ignored if the sentence was mandatory.
A lot of times these drunk drivers, their passenger is killed, and sometimes that's a close person, a loved one, and sometimes there's so much that goes into that equation for the perpetrator that they really suffer twice.
Skordas adds most people who cause a deadly crash while under the influence do spend at least 5 years in prison. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: 4 current and former Massachusetts state police troopers and 2 civilians facing federal charges of conspiring to give passing scores on commercial driver's license exams, known as CDLs, in exchange for gifts. Acting U.S. Attorney Joshua Levy.
They jokingly talk about golden treatments and golden handshakes, referring to giving guaranteed passes to certain CDL applicants, regardless of how they did on the test.
Prosecutors estimate about 24 commercial drivers are operating now with fraudulent licenses. And just ahead, we'll be talking about our weather and our situation with the air quality right now, and that will be coming up. KSL News Time is 1:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Your tax refund belongs to you, not an identity thief. Over $6 billion in tax refunds were flagged by the IRS for possible identity theft in 2023. If you're in a bind this tax season, LifeLock can help. Our U.S.-based restoration specialists are experts dedicated to helping solve your identity theft issues, and all LifeLock plans are backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. So we'll reimburse you up to the limits of your plan if you lose money due to identity theft. Don't let someone else enjoy your refund. Save up to 25% your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go: shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms: irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try soon. Harry's is available online and in-store at a retailer near you. Get a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/quality. That's harrys.com/quality. Or check us out at your local Costco for a price you can't find anywhere else. Just look for the Chrome Razor with 13-blade refills at your local Costco. You can't miss it. Exclusive to Costco members.
Made to Shine. Love stories from Shane Company customers.
We've only been dating 6 months, but I really wanted to get my girlfriend something special for Valentine's Day. So I went to Shane Company, and they thought a gift with their birthstone would be meaningful. So I got her an opal necklace, and their opals are spectacular. I was surprised it was only a couple $100. I can't wait to give it to her.
We're passionate about sourcing the most beautiful gemstones from around the world, so your love can shine bright. Shane Company. Fine jewelry since 1929.
Do you currently use a CPAP machine to treat sleep apnea? Are you looking for a smaller, more comfortable solution? Consider a custom-fitted oral appliance from Sound Sleep Medical. In many cases, these appliances can be as effective as CPAP, and oral appliances are usually covered by insurance or Medicare. To make an appointment or to learn more, call Sound Sleep Medical at 801-285-9731. That's 801-285-9731, or visit soundsleepmedical.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Valley Freeway traffic in good shape, no accidents or delays. Again, a reminder, due to a water main break, we have a closure of South Jordan Parkway, 104th South near 3200 West. It's going to be closed into Thursday. With fresh snow comes fresh tracks at Murdoch Hyundai. Right now, receive 0% for 3 years on the Tucson or Santa Fe. Ricky Meeks in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, high temperatures well above normal again today and tomorrow with diminished air quality, but we could see some showers moving in Thursday night and Friday. Right now, 50 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the pressure is mounting today on the Biden administration to respond to the attack in Jordan that killed 3 members of the U.S. military, injured over 40 others. The escalating conflict in the Middle East comes at a critical time and is increasingly dangerous. The war between Israel and Hamas obviously is not over. It more feels like the beginning. Houthi terrorists out of Yemen are disrupting international shipping lanes, attacking U.S. naval vessels. And now, of course, we have this Iranian-backed group that has carried out this drone attack on our troops inside of Jordan. And so the next steps, we often talk about the next steps. What are they and why they matter? I think we are really coming to a crucial moment, particularly for President Biden and the administration, in terms of what they do next will be an important signal to our allies in the region and to our enemies. There's always several audiences that you have to work to and work through as you go through these kinds of things from an international perspective. So let's break it down just a little bit to get underneath some of the headlines there. Earlier today, President Biden told reporters that he'd come to a decision regarding a U.S. response to the attack on U.S. troops in Jordan.
I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it. I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for.
So that was President Biden getting ready to get on the helicopter this morning. That's what you heard in the background. He was asked if he held Iran responsible. He said yes. He also said that he had made a decision regarding a U.S. response, and that was as much as information as the president delivered today in terms of what that might be. Clearly, he's not going to telegraph what that response will be or when that response will come. Now, yesterday during a meeting, Defense Secretary Austin gave his response to the attack and talked about his recovery as well post-surgery.
The President and I will not tolerate attack on U.S. forces, and we will take all necessary actions to defend the U.S. and our troops. Now, at this important time, I'm glad to be back at the Pentagon. I feel good and am recovering well, but still recovering.
So that was Secretary Austin, and again, important for him to be in the building. I think during a time like this, to be leading those discussions and exploring the options that President Biden and the administration have in terms of the response. And I think the response matters on so many different levels. We noted this yesterday, and I just think it's important that we don't lose sight of all of this, that there were 3 lives lost, not just because they were U.S. Service men and women, but that they were U.S. citizens and fellow travelers, and that we have in this country today 3 new Gold Star families who have lost loved ones, and I think they matter. I think their names matter. William Rivers, who was 46, Breonna Moffett, who was 23, and Kenny Sanders, who was 24. And again, there are over 40 U.S. service people that have been injured as well, and we continue to hold them in our thoughts and prayers as we continue to move this forward. And it's easy to skim past that and get on to next in terms of things, but I always think it's important that we stop and pause and remember all of this and the impact it has on so many individuals' lives, families, and communities. Earlier today, the Pentagon held a briefing to give the first updates on a U.S. response to that drone attack. And here's what the Pentagon spokesman, Brigadier General Pat Ryder, had to say.
In terms of additional details about the drone attack itself, we know there are still many questions, to include how the one-way attack drone could have penetrated the facility's air defenses, its point of origin, and which specific Iranian proxy group is responsible. I can tell you that U.S. Central Command is continuing to look into all those important questions, and that we'll keep you updated as new information becomes available. What we do know is that Iran-backed militias are responsible for these continued attacks on U.S. forces, and that we will respond at a time and manner of our choosing. While we do not seek to escalate tensions in the region, we will also take all necessary actions to protect our troops, our facilities, and our interests.
Now, he was asked if our response to this drone attack and this loss of life by U.S. military personnel, if the United States' response to the attack could disrupt hostage negotiations taking place between Israel and Hamas. General Ryder said that all of those things are being factored in as they present the administration and President Biden things to consider.
You know, as part of any decision-making process, we take a wide range of considerations into account, again, to include what our broader regional goals are, which from the very beginning has been to prevent the situation in Israel and Gaza from expanding into a broader conflict.
It's also important to remember where these troops were inside of Jordan and why they were there. General Ryder really emphasized and took some time to walk through that there will be a response for sure, but to remember that the United States is not there to conquer territory or to take things over. But those women and men of the U.S. military are there as part of an international effort to ensure that the terrorist group ISIS doesn't regain footing or strength in that particular region.
I'm not going to get into any details about what a potential future operation could look like. You've heard both the President and Secretary Austin say that we will respond in a time and a manner of our choosing. 3 U.S. service members were killed, over 40 wounded. Oh, by the way, these service members were deployed into the region to contribute to regional security and stability in support of the international coalition to ensure the lasting defeat of ISIS. So there will be consequences, and I'll just leave it at that.
Again, why they were there matters. Again, easy to take your eye off the ball when it comes to ISIS because they haven't been front and center, but that's how these organizations tend to run. Whenever they experience defeat anywhere in the world, they go underground, they reconstitute, they recalibrate, they re-resource up in terms of what they need, and then they redeploy. That's the pattern, that's the model. And so the reason the U.S. forces are there is part of an international effort to make sure that ISIS doesn't have a chance to do just that, to rearm, to re-energize, to re-recruit, get new people in and trained, and then continue to carry out terrorist activity. So that's an important piece of the puzzle as well. I want to conclude with something from Strategic Communications Director for the White House, John Kirby. He framed the president's statement in terms of what that response could look like and why it matters.
As he said yesterday, we will respond. We'll do that on our schedule, in our time, and we'll do it in the manner of the president's choosing as commander-in-chief. We'll also do it fully cognizant of the fact that these groups, backed by Tehran, have just taken the lives of American troops.
So as we look at all of that, again, it's a tricky needle to thread in a very difficult and complicated area of the world in the Middle East. And the president has his hands full. It is one of those moments where you really get tested and on many different levels. And obviously, no one is interested in a wider war in the Middle East. Everyone wants to make sure things are moving forward and dealing with the hostages that are being held by Hamas and working out some sort of path there where aid can get in to innocent Palestinians inside of Gaza, where Hamas can be rooted out as the problem. Israel can have confidence that they can be safe and their citizens secure, that there can be a place for the negotiations that, remember, before October 7th, we're moving along at a pretty promising pace when it comes to a two-state solution and the relationships that we're moving forward. So there were a lot of things that were going on, and you have to remember that terrorist organizations and groups like Hamas thrive in chaos. That's why they're terrorist organizations, and they have no place inside democracy, freedom, self-governance. They can't exist in that space, and so of course they don't want that to happen. And so then the question becomes, how do you respond? How do you retaliate? What is the right measure? How much? Is it a proportional response? That's always a tricky phrase for me. But is there something else that needs to be done to send the message to Tehran in terms of their support of these kinds of groups? It seems to me that the president has struggled most when it comes to Iran and where funds have been going, things that have started to flow, and where those resources are ending up, that often those profits are ending up in proxy groups that end up taking and making attacks like these against U.S. forces and very innocent people in the region. So lots to watch, lots to consider, lots that we will continue to see what happens. We know the president has made a decision as commander-in-chief. Now, when he will do that and what that will look like, we'll continue to follow it, and you can continue to follow us here on KSL News Radio. We'll go ahead and step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You'd probably love some Utah Jazz tickets. Am I right?
Through traffic all the way to the finish line and let it up and in.
KSL wants you to go see the Jazz Sixers game. Listen to Tim and Amanda Wednesday and Thursday morning for your chance to win Primo Jazz tickets Wednesday and Thursday on Utah's Morning News on KSL News Radio.
Here's my advice. Don't shape up alone. So often we try to get our act together. We try to get fit. We try to lose weight. We try to do it on our own. Don't do that anymore. Do what I did. Go with SOTA Weight Loss. SOTA stands for state-of-the-art weight loss. Why? Because it is state-of-the-art, and it allows you to shape up with somebody in your corner, on your side, 24/7. You'll have your own nutritionist and coach to help you every step of the way. So if you're having a rough day, all you got to do is text, call your coach. You're right there. If you're not sure what to eat at a particular restaurant or you're at the grocery store looking for the right options, it's all right there. I lost 37 pounds in less than 90 days. I am 2 years in, and I still don't do it alone because I still have my coach and nutritionist helping me every step of the way. You've heard me say it before. When it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So begin yours today. Don't do it alone. Do it with SOTA Weight Loss. SOTA weightloss.com. SOTA weightloss.com.
The new year is here, and it's time to take advantage of Zero Res's best deal of the year. Carpets, tile, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zero Resified. So it's time to call the cleaning pros at Zero Res. Don't forget your air ducts to help alleviate allergies or asthma. Enjoy less dust, lower energy bills, and your home will stay cleaner longer. Don't DIY it. Call Zero Res because you know it's safe and effective. Zero Res has a 4.8 rating on Google with over 3,300 reviews. The Zero Res Gotta Love It guarantee makes it easy to get what you pay for. Yeah, Zero Res absolutely stands behind every cleaning. Don't miss the best deal of the year. Get back to clean and get one room of carpet cleaning starting at just $25 per room by using promo code 25RM. Call Zero Res at 866-ZERO-RES or go online at ZeroRes.com and say you want the station special. Zero Res. Spell it backward or forwards. It spells the same.
Don't let this warm weather fool you. We still got a lot of cold nights ahead of us. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you haven't scheduled your annual furnace tune-up yet, I got some good news for you. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Tuesday, January 30th, and mention you heard this ad, we'll give you $95 off and tune up your furnace for only $29. You won't hear this ad tomorrow, so call Any Hour Services right now to schedule. 801-443-7400. A furnace tune-up is the least expensive way to extend the life of your furnace and avoid unexpected breakdowns. And our technicians service all brands. 801-443-7400. If it's more convenient, go to anyhourservices.com and look for the red button that says Book Online. Schedule your $29 tune-up there. That's a $124 value for only $29. If you get a hold of Any Hour Services today, call 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
Sign up for KSL text alerts and you could win cash. Text the word cash to 57500 for a chance to win $250. That's cash to 57500. Plus, you'll get breaking news and traffic updates right to your phone. Want to win more prizes? Text contest to 57500. Jazz fans, text the word jazz for breaking Utah Jazz news. And Cougar fans, text BYU to 57500 for the latest on the Cougars. Message and data rates may apply. For an alternate entry method and complete contest rules, go to KSLNewsRadio.com.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
There's a new study out from Pew Research Center that can shed a little light on the population of a group of the population that are religiously unaffiliated, or the religious nuns, as they are called. And again, that's N-O-N-E-S, lest we be confused there. We want to dive in a little bit in terms of who these people are, what that looks like. What does that mean in terms of community and culture and the country as a whole? And as always, we turn to our good friend Kelsey Dallas from the Deseret News, Deseret.com. Kelsey, great piece, as always, looking at the data. And so, I think we have all come to the agreement that we need to come up with a new name for those who fall into this category rather than calling them just the nuns.
Yes, that doesn't really capture the complexity of what's going on.
And so give us a sense in terms of the data. What did we learn in this latest batch from Pew Research in terms of what does this group look like? Obviously, it's not a monolithic group by any stretch of the imagination. So what are we learning about them?
So we know now that the nuns are about 28% of U.S. adults that identify as religiously unaffiliated. That doesn't mean that they're all atheists, though. It's only about 17% of that group of 28% that's atheists. The biggest chunk of the nuns are just saying that they're nothing in particular. They don't belong to a particular church or identify with a particular denomination. Another important note is what groups them all together as religious nuns is that answer to a question about religious affiliation. So it's simply saying, oh, no, I'm not Presbyterian or I'm not Latter-day Saint. I'm nothing in particular. That plops you together with the other nuns. And then there's plenty of diversity within the group, as you might imagine. A large chunk of the nuns still believe in God or some higher power. Many have positive feelings about religious organizations. They just, for many different reasons, haven't actively attended church in a while, don't necessarily pray very often, and then, of course, most notably, don't consider themselves a member of a church.
So interesting to look at all that. And then you start playing that out a little bit in terms of the impact. I thought one of the interesting things within the research was this idea of engagement in civil society, whether that's voting, whether that's volunteering. And there's some interesting distinction between the nuns and those that are affiliated versus those that are affiliated and are actively participating on a regular basis. Kind of break that down for us.
So for almost as long as people have been talking about the nuns in the grand scheme of religious life in America, they've been worrying about what the rise of the nuns will mean for civic groups that have nothing to do with faith or very little to do with faith. Because for decades, if not centuries, it's church involvement that draws people into other types of community involvement. As I've experienced in my life, you've probably experienced in your life, you form these connections through your faith community that then help you stay engaged in your community in other unrelated ways. And so the fear has been that by dropping out of church, the nuns are dropping out of just social life. That may sound extreme, but really that is the concern, that they're not going to be volunteering in any capacity, that they're not going to remember to vote in elections, that they're not going to join the PTA at their children's schools. And the good news from this Pew survey is that a lot of those fears are overblown, that nuns do participate in a lot of these community activities in similar rates that other Americans, religiously affiliated Americans, do. The one area of concern that researchers pointed to is that the group that is with a sort of nothing in particular bunch, they are a little less likely than others to be engaged. And you might have predicted that because if your identity is not choosing an identity, then your activity is probably not choosing an activity. So it makes sense that if you actively identify as atheist or agnostic, you're probably more active about other things in your life as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I spotted today, this was in the Washington Post, talking about this same polling coming out from Pew Research Center, mirrors a lot of what your coverage was at Deseret.com. But she talked about the difference and the importance of kind of these groups and associations, that connective tissue is the real important thing, that the nuns were similar to people who have religious affiliation, but different from those who participate regularly, like attend religious services on a regular basis. That's where they seem to see a little bit of that community connective tissue being a little different.
Yeah, some of what is disguised by the fact that we often talk about Americans in these broad categories of religiously affiliated versus religiously unaffiliated is that a notable chunk of religiously affiliated Americans actually aren't engaging in religious practices with others. So by going to church regularly, and that's what I've spoken about with religion scholars and other experts recently, is that's just as dangerous as sort of the social fabric in the U.S. as people choosing to say they're nothing in particular. We need people to buy into social groups of many different kinds in order to stay unified and to get these beneficial activities done, like volunteering.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's such great perspective there. As you look at it rolling forward, I think one of the other challenges, and you've raised this in the past in terms of younger people, clearly the group of nuns is dominated by those under 50 years of age. So it's clearly a younger crowd there. What is it that is going to have to change, or what do religious institutions, which many of the nuns distrust, what are they going to have to do? Where do they meet them in terms of trying to re-engage them?
I think there are a couple different tracks that religious organizations could take. One is to have high barriers to entry so that once someone comes in the door, they really become captivated by these intense routines. And so you see a lot of interest these days actually in the more formal versions of Catholic practice or Orthodox Christianity, where people are having to be challenged to attend multiple services a week and pass these different classes to become members. And so it can become kind of addictive, like I'm going to make it through all these obstacles and then be really embedded in this community. But the alternative path that many faith groups are probably better prepared to take is to actually lower the barrier to entry and just invite people in for things that are only tangential to organized religion, that are just sort of a community activity, like let's have a group Easter egg hunt, and we're not going to talk to you about Jesus Christ today. We're just going to do the Easter egg hunt, and then maybe next week we could talk to you about our faith. And so some of the folks I was talking to were just saying, what if we marketed these religious spaces as just purely social spaces where you can get out of your lonely feeling, get out into the community, and then we can sort of work on the spiritual and religious beliefs sometime down the road. And so I sort of really was charmed by that idea that churches would be these really valuable gathering spaces, and then the religious leaders and embedded members could sort of figure out the details later once they're bringing people out of their shells.
Fascinating stuff. Yeah, that's a really interesting debate in terms of whether you need higher expectations or no expectations and just creating that space. That's a fascinating one. We'll come back to that one on another day. Kelsey Dallas, as always, great research, great writing, great thinking. Thanks for joining us today. That's my conversation with Kelsey Dallas, and that's a big one. So many interesting things to unpack in all of that. And that's going to wrap us up for hour number 1 here on Inside Sources. But you don't want to go anywhere, because in hour number 2, coming up at 2:35, we're going to be joined by Jen Drummond. Just mark it, be there. She is a record-breaking mountaineer. She has the first woman to summit the second highest summit on each of the 7 continents. Extraordinary story, principles that will change your world today. So stick around with us for hour number 2. Again, 2:35, Jen Drummond. Set your clock, be ready to go. We'll be back with more Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Our warmer weather could be one of the reasons why people in areas like Cottonwood Heights are spotting mountain lions more often.
If we have a lot of snow high and deer move down into the foothills or into the valleys, lions are likely to follow.
Darren DeBlois with the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources says deer sometimes will head into the valley not only to find food, but because it's easier to move around with less snow on the ground. He also says some younger cougars are moving around looking for new places to settle. If you happen to see a mountain lion more than once or it acts aggressively, contact the Division of Wildlife Resources. The Big 12 football schedule is out, and looking at home games, BYU hosts Kansas State in August. Arizona and Oklahoma State will be in Provo in October. Kansas and Houston will play at LaVell Edwards Stadium in November, with the Houston game ending the regular season. For the Utah Utes, home games include Baylor and Arizona in August. TCU will be the only home game in September. In November, the Utes host BYU on the 9th, followed by Iowa State 2 weeks later, and Utah's final regular season game will be at UCF. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. After more than 160 attacks on U.S. facilities since October, one extremist group, Hezbollah, says it's suspending military operations in Iraq against what it calls occupation troops. ABC's Andy Field has the latest.
Hezbollah saying it's stopping military attacks against U.S. forces to prevent embarrassing the Iraqi government, and that Iranian-funded group will continue defending its people in Gaza in other ways. Hezbollah telling its followers to only passively defend against any hostile American actions. The Pentagon says it has only responded to Hezbollah and other attacks on the U.S.
Hezbollah has been responsible for any number of attacks against Israel from Lebanon. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day, 133 points as we approach the close of trading. NASDAQ, though, is down by 118. And our KSL weather, just sunshine for the next couple of days. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:02.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, over-designed, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try soon. Harry's is available online and in-store at a retailer near you. Get a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/quality. That's harrys.com/quality. Or check us out at your local Costco for a price you can't find anywhere else. Just look for the Chrome Razor with 13 blade refills at your local Costco. You can't miss it. Exclusive to Costco members.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. And did you know that we get a bunch of service calls per year from people who didn't even hire us? That means they originally hired someone else to replace their siding, gutters, and windows. Then later, when a problem popped up, they tried to call their contractor back to fix it, only to find out that the contractor has ceased to exist. They're gone, done, out of business. At RGS Exteriors, we've been serving Utah for 70 years. As a fifth-generation owned contractor, we've got customers who are the grandkids of our customers we had in the 1950s and 60s. We're not going anywhere. We will be here when you need us, period. For siding, gutters, and windows, now and forever, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit at rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
It's the Boat Show, February 1st through the 4th at Mountain America Expo.
Save $2 at UtahBoatShow.com.
The Boat Show, fun for the whole family.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Had a report of a possible accident, State Street 1300 South. Looks like traffic is getting through the area, so no big issues there. And Salt Lake County freeways, all in good shape. It's Zero Res's best deal of the year. Get one room of carpet cleaned, starting at $25 per room with promo code 25RM. Book online anytime at ZeroRes.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny, high temperatures, well above normal again today and tomorrow with diminished air quality, though. But we could see showers move in Thursday night and Friday. And right now, 52 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Plus, the 2024 election cycle continues on, especially on the presidential front. The Biden administration faces a number of hurdles that they'll have to overcome on the road to a possible re-election and 4 more years in the White House. Of course, in addition to dealing with some of the issues that come up from just the pure politics standpoint, the president's age, the economy, of course, has clearly been top of mind for most Americans. And if there's one thing the Biden administration needs to shift in terms of the headline, if they're going to feel confident going into 2024, it is about messaging and the economy. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So as we get to the Think Again segment here, I want you to think again about what we think we know about the economy. And more importantly, how it gets messaged by presidents. I have always said that presidents of both political parties get far too much credit when the economy is good and way too much blame when the economy goes south. But it's always front and center when it comes to political campaigns. So what they do have to do is deal with it. And then they have to message around it and communicate. And I think this is an area where the Biden administration has struggled. There are clearly some things about the economy that they would love to tout, things that are going well, positive indicators, positive signs. But where they have failed completely and fallen flat is how they're talking about it. Because what they're saying, I've often said the problem with the administration is they talk to the American people as if they're economists. And we're not. The citizens are not economists. We're consumers. We're citizens. We're members of family and community. And you can explain all the economics of it and why we should be so happy, but that doesn't help me if I'm not getting my bills paid by the end of the month, or if I'm really weighing in whether or not we can afford a trip with the kids this summer. It's a very different dynamic. And so how you communicate it actually matters. And so I want to take a little historical compare and contrast today. And again, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum or who you're for or against when it comes to presidential politics, we should focus on the communication strategy portion of the program. So last week, President Biden was speaking to a crowd of United Auto Workers, very raucous crowd, very positive, very supportive crowd. They had just endorsed President Biden in his reelection campaign, and he gave a message to this group on the economy and his policies. So here's just a little bit of how he messaged that economic vision.
We have a big fight in front of us. We're fundamentally changing the economy of this country, and everybody's getting a little worried about it, the very powerful. Some are seeing the light, but changing the economy, taking it from an economy that takes care of those at the top, and changing an economy that gives people who built this country a fair shot.
Now, the president's starting to do a little bit of explaining, and I don't think for that group, watching that last week, this was a group that was excited. They believe that President Biden's on their side. He'd been on the picket line with them last year. And they got this explaining thing, and nobody quite knew what to make of it. Does that mean their jobs were going away? What does that mean for their family, for their community? And so it kind of became this muddled mess in terms of a speech and a communication strategy. And while the president was not wrong in terms of what needs to happen and what the path forward might look like under his policies, he completely missed the opportunity to connect it to the American people. You may recall back in 1979, I have referred to this speech often because I think it's one of the most underrated speeches ever delivered from the Oval Office. 1979, President Jimmy Carter delivered a speech that became known as the Malaise speech. I actually think it's a brilliant speech if you read it. But just take a listen to a little bit of what Jimmy Carter was trying to sell, but how he did it with words and emotion that just might have missed the mark.
It is a crisis of confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. We can see this crisis in the growing doubt about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of a unity of purpose for our nation. The erosion of our confidence in the future is threatening to destroy the social and the political fabric of America.
So that was President Jimmy Carter back in 1979. And again, it was a complicated speech. It was a complex speech. I do encourage you to go read it because it's a great read. And there are some things in there that we should be talking about in a very serious way in this election cycle. We'll come back to that on another day. But the interesting thing when it came to President Carter's speech, and again, what became known and labeled as the Malaise speech, is sort of becoming the equivalent with President Biden's Bidenomics, that it's not working and it's not connecting with the American people. There was a great piece in The Hill today by J.T. Young who talked about this from the Carter perspective, that President Biden was sort of out-Cartering Jimmy Carter when it comes to talking about the economy. And so the question was really about, how are you and what's going on? Are you doing better or are you doing worse? And I think the challenge for President Biden is, regardless of all the economic indicators, regardless of all the economic measures that economists are very excited and happy about, people don't feel that. They feel like they are worse off. And that's not a product of exaggeration, as J.T. Young pointed out. He says it's a product of inflation and expectation. The expectation is the real challenge. So if you go back to President Carter and then 1980, Ronald Reagan simplified it all in terms of a communication economic message and said, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Simple, straightforward, allowed the American people to ask themselves the question, and the answer was no, they weren't better off than they were 4 years ago, and the result was a resounding win for Ronald Reagan. So it was very simple. It was very straightforward. I actually think President Biden has opportunity to do some things around the economy and the strong components of the economy. But the way they're trying to communicate it, how they're going about it, the way they're trying to grab headlines of this is really interesting, almost head-scratching to me. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And now we've seen, even just in the last few days, that they have started to shift their message from touting Bidenomics and how wonderful that has been for the American people. They're now turning and pivoting and battling against the policies of former President Trump. Again, that might be a way to score some points. I don't know if it's the path to victory for President Biden. Because you have to get to that positive vision in terms of where are we going from here. It's easy to deconstruct. It's easy to tear down. It's a completely different thing to have a vision and to have people feel the vision of what you can do and where you want to lead. The American people will get on board. The American people will actually get on board to do really hard stuff. They'll sign up and say, yeah, let's do it. But you got to give them a vision. You got to go up on the mountain somewhere and plant the flag and say, here's where we're going. And I don't think anybody's doing that right now, whether it's the Biden administration or anyone on the Republican side that's currently running for president. So the conversation will be interesting as we continue to march this forward. But I think the administration is missing it. It sounds much more Carter-esque than it does Reagan-esque. And when it comes to messaging, the American people will ask themselves, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? And the question is, who will lead to what comes next? We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. Meet Aileen.
Hello.
Aileen suffers from FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Missing out on her favorite KSL shows.
I really do.
Fear not, Aileen. Just bring up the podcast page at KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's Morning News, Dave and Debbie, Boyd Matheson, and Jeff Kaplan are all there. Plus BYU Cougar Podcasts, The Movie Show, and more.
No more FOMO?
No more FOMO. When you can't listen live, we have you covered at KSLNewsRadio.com.
It's the dead of winter, and our friends at Advanced Window Products have a wonderful wintertime offer. This is Jeff Kaplan. If the cold is seeping into your house right now, Nate and Jake will give you $2,500 off on double-pane windows and the highest quality custom frames built right here in Utah. Any style, any color, and the $2,500 is atop their already low prices. See, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. At Advanced Window Products, they offer 0% financing. You can save now, pay later, so take advantage in the dead of winter while the wind is whistling and give your home, your number one asset, a fresh new look. Plus, you save money on heating and air conditioning, so much so the energy companies offer rebates. Buy local. Their factories right here in Salt Lake City. Save an extra $2,500 off the best windows and frames in Utah. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
It's easy to think all money managers are pretty much the same, but at Fisher Investments, we're clearly different.
Different? How? You sell high commission investment products, right?
No, Fisher Investments doesn't sell any commission-based investment products.
Well, you must earn commissions on trades.
Nope, never at Fisher. We're a fiduciary, obligated to act in our client's best interest. It's the highest standard of care for a financial advisor.
How do you know what's in their best interest?
We get to know our clients and then tailor a portfolio based on their goals and needs.
But you probably sneak in some hidden and layered fees.
No, we have one transparent management fee structured so we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, you really do look out for your clients.
That's because our top priority is helping them achieve a comfortable retirement. It might be why most of our clients come from other money managers. Visit FisherInvestments.com to find out why investors like you switch to us. Fisher Investments. Clearly different money management.
Investments and securities involve the risk of loss.
This Monday Tax Tip is brought to you by Susan Spears, CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs.
In 2021, Congress passed the Corporate Transparency Act. This law creates a new beneficial ownership information reporting requirement as part of the U.S. government's efforts to make it harder for bad actors to hide behind anonymous entities as part of illicit financial activities. In the U.S., it is estimated that 32 million companies will be required to make this filing to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. To find out if your organization is exempt, contact your CPA.
Get the most out of your income tax preparation when you hire a CPA. Go to uacpa.org to find a CPA that's right for you. That's uacpa.org. uacpa.org. Listen to KSL on Monday for more tax tips from the Utah Association of CPAs.
Don't let this warm weather fool you. We still got a lot of cold nights ahead of us. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you haven't scheduled your annual furnace tune-up yet, I got some good news for you. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Tuesday, January 30th, and mention you heard this ad, we'll give you $95 off and tune up your furnace for only $29. You won't hear this ad tomorrow, so call Any Hour Services right now to schedule. 801-443-7400. A furnace tune-up is the least expensive way to extend the life of your furnace and avoid unexpected breakdowns, and our technicians service all brands. 801-443-7400. If it's more convenient, go to anyhourservices.com and look for the red button that says Book Online. Schedule your $29 tune-up there. That's $124 value for only $29 if you get a hold of Any Hour Services today. Call 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, there are several reasons why we might be seeing more mountain lions in neighborhoods near the canyons. Melting snow is just one of them. Second, if you want to tattle on vehicles that are just idling during bad air periods, one state legislator thinks you should be rewarded for that. And third, one Iranian-backed extremist group says it's going to stop its attacks on American forces in Iraq. Right now, 52 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
We're staying with the conversation as it relates to President Biden and his campaign. And again, put your politics on the shelf. Don't care whether you love him or hate him. We're looking at this from a communication strategy standpoint and what that message is and isn't, where it's working and where it's not. In the previous segment, we went through some of the specifics in terms of what the president is touting. There's a lot to tout. But if he talks to the American people as if they were economists as opposed to consumers, it's not resonating and it's not passing the "are you better off than you were 4 years ago" test. And so that's going to be part of it. We heard a lot about Bidenomics, and that has not been resonating in that space. There seems to be a misalignment between what the American people are experiencing and, again, even those positive numbers that the president can share. Adam Cancrin's a White House correspondent for Politico, and he has a great piece talking about how the Biden campaign is now shifting the economic message a little bit from what they're for to what they're against. And Adam, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Boyd. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, let's dive into this great piece today, talking about this shift from the Biden campaign on the economic message, rather than just touting the wins that sometimes are hard for the American people to wrap their heads around in terms of what it means at the kitchen table, and more of an attack strategy in terms of what they're against. Kind of break that down for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we see from incumbents in election years all the time is, they try to make the upcoming election, whether it's the midterms or whether it's a re-election, more of a choice between two candidates rather than just a pure referendum on, whether they've been doing the job well enough for voters. And so what we're seeing here now is kind of this evolution in the message now that it's pretty clear to everybody that Donald Trump is most likely going to be the GOP nominee. We've seen this evolution in the Biden messaging from talking almost solely about Bidenomics and the Biden agenda and what he's done and why it's good for people, now to making those points, but then adding, and this other guy that you're going to have a choice from, here's why he's going to do things that are worse off, that will leave you worse off, right? So it's this contrast message between Biden, especially Biden working for the working class, for working class families, versus now bringing in Trump, going specifically at him as, a friend of billionaires and the wealthy, somebody who would reverse the progress that's been made over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And in some aspects, it's almost this wraparound moment, right? You had former President Trump in 2016 really rode that populist wave of "I'm watching out for you and looking out for the little guy," and now it's this full circle moment for the Biden campaign to now say, "Wait a minute, he's the millionaire guys with the tax cuts and so on. We have something that's going to protect you, the little guy, regardless of how you're feeling today."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a way, it's kind of a recognition of where the electorate has moved over the last several years. You have two candidates who are almost trying to out-populist each other.
Right.
Say, I'm the candidate for the little guy. You have to believe me. The one place where the Biden campaign has really zeroed in, and you're going to see this more as we get toward the State of the Union in March, is they can really make the delineation when it comes to taxes, right? Biden has backed a whole slate of tax increases on the wealthy, on corporations, has said, look, I'm not going to raise taxes. I'm not going to raise taxes on anybody making under $400,000. But when it comes to those making over that level, I want to raise a whole bunch of taxes. Trump, by contrast, his one legislative accomplishment, the big one from his first term, was this tax cut bill that mostly was a windfall for large corporations. It slashed the corporate tax rate. And so officials in the White House on the Biden campaign feel like that's the area that's simple, people understand it, and there's a wide gulf here. There's a wide gap between where the two candidates stand.
Yeah, very interesting. One of the other things that you noted in your piece today, which was really brilliantly done, was the fact that the Biden campaign is also going to start ratcheting up some of that other rhetoric on the corporate side, the big business side, the price gouging, that kind of stuff. Give us a sense of what you're hearing and thinking there.
Yeah, we've heard this a little bit from the president here and there. And usually it's when, voters aren't happy about some part of the economy, right? And what the strategy here is there's a realization that no matter what the economic data is. Biden can't just go out and say, the economy is great and you have to believe me and you should be appreciative, right? Voters do not respond to being told how they should feel.
Right.
But he can go out there and say, look, all the evidence says everything's looking good. But if you're not feeling that, if you're not feeling good about the trajectory, don't blame me. Here's somebody else to blame, right? And so he's trying to kind of shift that frustration, that consternation from voters from being targeted at him and more toward other areas, right? Corporations, companies that have consolidated industries that are price gouging, that are making people's lives a little bit harder, whether it's through, overdraft fees from the banks or, extra seat fees for airlines. It's all kind of part of this idea of really leaning into, fighting against big corporations and showing people, what difference he's making in their daily lives, even if it's a relatively small one.
Yeah, that's such a great insight and perspective on that, because I do think it's going to be this race to the bottom of the populist pile when we get to the end, and whether it's like you said, seats on airplane change fees or whatever it may be. It's all those little things that people say, oh yeah, I want to be protected from that. That I think is really interesting. Give us a sense, just in our last minute here, in terms of other things that you're watching or expecting to see, again, from that messaging side, as clearly the Bidenomics message just was not clicking and getting the traction, and why this two-part, Bidenomics plus this is what we're against in terms of the other guy, seems to be the path that they're going to go down.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a couple points. One point I should make really clear is, I think there's a recognition in the Biden camp that when it comes to the economy, they're at a disadvantage, right? Voters naturally tend to trust Republicans more on the economy, just as a general rule. When it comes to Trump and Biden, you look at all the polling, and Biden is pretty deep underwater when it comes to his handling of the economy. So this is in part a recognition that, look, the Bidenomics message alone was not really gaining much traction, and this is an effort essentially to narrow that gap. There's also a realization, if you look at the bigger picture beyond just the economy, that this election is going to be mainly about three things: how people feel about the economy, how they feel about abortion and the future of abortion and reproductive rights, and then thirdly, just kind of the future of democracy, right? What Trump represents in terms of a threat to American democracy. And so from the Biden campaign's view, they feel like if you can essentially fight Trump to even or close to even on the economy, then they are in better shape when it comes to reproductive rights and when it comes to democracy issues. And so their hope is that will carry the day. So you have a little bit of kind of three-dimensional, four-dimensional thinking here to try to put themselves in the best position come November.
That's a perfect breakdown. Very well said, and that's why we always have you back on the show, because the thinking, the writing is great perspective. You can check that out at Politico. Adam Cancrin, White House correspondent for Politico. Always appreciate it, Adam. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thanks, Boyd. Anytime.
All right, again, that's Adam Cancrin from Politico, and that's a really good summation in terms of President Biden's strategy and what they're doing. If they can play close to even on the economic stuff, then they feel like they can win on some of the other issues of the day. So we'll continue to watch, and we'll look at what the Republicans will do as we move through the week in terms of their messaging strategy. We're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news, but do not go anywhere. Sit down, settle in. Jen Drummond is going to join us. She has summited the second highest peak on each of the seven continents. She's a mother of seven. She lives in Utah. We're going to talk to her coming up next. You do not want to miss a minute. We'll be right back with Inside Sources.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. The irrigation company that runs the Settlement Canyon Reservoir in Tooele has closed it now to all activity. The closure follows the death of a man who fell through thin ice and drowned yesterday. He'd been trying to rescue a woman who'd fallen through. She survived but was taken to the hospital. You could start getting a cash reward for being a tattletale on idling vehicles. A new bill from Senator Nate Blauen would give people part of the fine if they record video of commercial vehicles idling for longer than 3 minutes.
I think it gives people kind of an individual stake in it, like literally with the potential rewards.
The bill would only allow counties to opt into this program. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Federal agents in the United States say they've dismantled a large drug trafficking network that spanned Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Long-haul truck drivers were moving fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine from L.A. to places like Montreal, Toronto, and Calgary. U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada announced those arrests in Los Angeles.
We had drug suppliers from Mexico, drug brokers and traffickers in Los Angeles and elsewhere in the United States. We had Canadian truck drivers and organizers, and we had an associate of the Italian mafia based in Montreal, Canada.
Illegal drugs can sell in Canada for 20 times more than in the United States. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today up 133 points, while the NASDAQ was down 118. The S&P 500 was down just under 3 points. And our KSL weather, the sunshine will continue for a couple of days yet. That's next. KSL News Time 2:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're for the ones who specialize in saving the day and for the ones who've mastered the art of keeping business moving. We offer industrial-grade supplies for every industry with same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders, all backed by real people ready to help. So you can get the right answers and products right when you need them. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
At this time of year, isn't it great to have something to look forward to? There's something about January and February. You've just got to have that thing on the calendar you're so looking forward to. Might I recommend dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Let's talk about Hotel Park City. That's where you're going to find Ruth's Chris Steakhouse up in Summit County. After a day of skiing, it is the perfect way to wrap up that perfect day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, we have a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here as well, right in the middle of all the action. So whether it's a play, a ball game, whatever it might be, that delicious dinner, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Plus, it's only fair to remind you that Valentine's Day now is just around the corner, and your sweetheart is going to love that amazing meal. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 275 Southwest Temple, and also Hotel Park City. The meal you're waiting for, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
Hey folks, it's Doug and Kathy with Window World.
Doug, can you believe it's been 20 years?
What's been 20 years?
Well, since we opened our first Window World store.
That is amazing. Our motto today is the same: quality products, professionally installed, backed up by our awesome warranty.
And our team shares those very same values.
Come see us today. We have stores in Murray and Spanish Fork for your convenience.
Experience the Window World difference. Call 801-281-8111 or visit windowworldutah.com.
And we promise no baloney.
They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. You may not have that kind of time for weatherization, energy efficiency, and appliance rebates, but we do. Dominion Energy's ThermWise program has experts who know where and how to save money. They help homeowners and businesses find simple ways to conserve natural gas and rebates through upgrades that may help to save even more. We put our energy into helping you conserve it, so you can spend your 10,000 hours becoming an expert in what matters to you. Start with a home energy plan at thermwise.com.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Still some slowdown southbound on Foothill Drive, approaching 1700 South. An auto pedestrian accident, a report of this crash at 2900 South. I believe it's about 500 East. Valley Freeway traffic still seeing a good drive, no accidents or delays. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, if you don't think 52 today is high enough, how about 56 for tomorrow? We will see diminished air quality with those above normal temperatures and could see some showers move in Thursday night and Friday. And right now, 52 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, of course, we got a lot of political chaos going on, a lot of things that are exhausting and exasperating, and things that can cause us to lose track of the things that actually matter most in our own personal lives, in our families, and in our communities. As you know, on this show, we only talk about politics so we can explore society and culture, and we explore society and culture so we can talk about principles and the people who actually live them in this country. And for the next 22 minutes, just sit down. We're going to talk about some extraordinary principles that are being lived by an extraordinary woman. Jen Drummond is a record-breaking mountaineer. She is the author of a brand new book called Breakproof. She's the first female world record holder. She's the first to summit the second highest summit on each of the 7 continents. She's a mom of 7 and a host of other things, and someone who knows what it means to live the principles. And Jen, welcome to the show.
Boy, thanks for having me today.
The book is amazing. Everyone should order the book because it'll change your world. But I want you to take us to the origin story, the backstory to all of this. I think that's where our stories really begin. Before you decided, hey, I'm going to go climb all the highest mountains and the second highest mountains, where were you and what was it that sparked this idea that, hey, I'm going to go summit a few of these big mountains?
Yeah, I was a stay-at-home mom living by the motto that when my kids got to school, I would get back to my life. And I'm like, man, I have 10 years till these little guys go to college. Luck would have it that in 2018, I was in a horrific car crash coming back to my home. And the police have rebuilt that accident about 50 different times and could not come up with a scenario where I lived, let alone walked away. Have that type of event happen in your life, and it shakes the paradigm and allows you to look at things differently. And I shifted. I was no longer afraid of dying. I was afraid of not living.
That's so powerful. Yeah. And so you're raising these 7 kids. You've had this experience.
Raising the kids. Yeah, raising the kids. Had this near-death experience. Spun me into 2019 being the year of the bucket list. What do I want to do, experience, see, try, taste, explore? And then 2020, I was turning 40. So when I looked over my bucket list, I saw climb a mountain. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to climb a mountain for my 40th birthday. It's only get harder when I'm older. And what a great way to launch that next decade of life. And so when I asked friends that were into mountaineering, hey, if you could climb one mountain in the whole world, what would you climb? And the general consensus was a mountain named Ama Dablam, which is located in Nepal. And it meant the mother's necklace. So I'm like, okay, perfect. I'm going to climb Ama Dablam. Well, fast forward a little bit. COVID enters the scene. I'm not climbing anything or going anywhere. And in fact, now I'm a homeschool teacher to 7 amazing humans. That was fun. That was fun. And then one day, one of my little guys was struggling with his math homework. So I'm giving him that parent pep talk, like, we do hard things. You've got this, buddy. That little guy looks up at me and he goes, Mom, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? I'm like, buddy, it's Ama Dablam, not I'm a Dumb Blonde, but thank you. Finish your homework. We'll look at Everest. And so, I know, right? Like, kids say the darndest things. So he finished his homework. We looked at Everest. He went to bed. I was still looking at Everest, and I thought, hey, I'm going to climb Everest. I'm going to show this guy whatever our hard thing is, whatever our Everest is, we're capable of summiting. So I call a coach. The coach is like, yeah, I can get you ready. Buy this book about becoming an uphill athlete. So I buy the book. Somehow a lady in the front of the book wrote a foreword, and it was about her getting a Guinness World Record. I thought that sounded pretty exciting. My coach kind of upped that, and he said, I'll come up with something, and he did. He came up with the 7-second summits, which, like we said earlier, are the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. It hadn't been done by a woman before. It only been done by one male. They're harder than the first 7. And he goes, Jen, think about it. 7 continents, 7 mountains, 7 children. It sounds like a jackpot. I had a whole body yes. I hadn't slept in a tent before, but I figured we'd get those details worked out. So there we go.
So there you go, and you're off and rolling, and you start working through that. And the thing that I love about the way you've constructed your book is, I mean, one, just the experiences themselves are extraordinary, but they are so layered in lessons and principles that all of us can apply no matter what we're dealing with. And I want to get into a few of those, because I think there are some things that we think about. Oh my gosh, here's Jen, this great, mountain climber. She's in the Guinness Book of World Records, first woman to do this. And we think, but I'm just here trying to make it through my day without strangling my manager or, hurting the guy in traffic going home. You talk about one thing in terms of navigating the messy middle. I think that is a crucial principle. Give us an example from your experience.
Oh, yes. So the messy middle is when you've left base camp and there's a summit, but you have no clue, and you swear you've been walking for hours and days and doing something. And there's just, like, we were climbing in South America on a volcano. Volcanoes are just like large anthills in the middle of nowhere. And so you don't have anything that really gives you perception that you've made progress, except that your clock has moved 4 hours or something. You're like, I know we've been moving uphill. I just have no way of knowing that I'm still going. And the middle's messy because we don't see shore. We don't see the top. We don't see the end. We can't remember where we came from. And so when I get into those positions, I always want to look back and say, oh, actually, I am making progress because look how tiny base camp looks now, or look how different this is. And then also being sure to celebrate things along the way. So we started doing every 45 minutes, we put a timer on our phone, and we'd have like a little snack party. And we had to call it a snack party, so we got excited again to keep going.
Oh, I love that. You've also done an extraordinary job of including your children in this. This is no small thing, but you've done what I think is one of the most important things, and that is to take a personal goal and then extend it so that everyone feels like they're part of that story. You've done that with your kids' schools. Give us a sense of that.
Yeah, no, so that's the thing. Big mountains take big teams. So if we have a big goal and we have something we're trying to accomplish, the more people on your team, the more enjoyable it's going to be for everybody involved. And when it was time to climb Everest, I'd never been away from home for more than a week. I was going to have to be gone for 3 weeks. And just like working through that problem, instead of having that be a roadblock, that became a challenge. And it was like, how do we overcome this? The kids' school got involved with the climb, and I went in there and talked to all the kids about setting Everest goals. And then when I was climbing, my kids were so seen and supported by everyone, from the neighbor to the lunch lady to the teacher. And when I came back, the real win wasn't me summiting Everest. It was me being able to witness my kids being taken care of by people that were not labeled mom.
Love that. It does take a village, and we are the village, not the government, not anybody else. It's all of us together. We're going to stay with the conversation because this is what really matters in our lives. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick commercial break as we step aside. We're going to stay with Jen Drummond, a book you need to pick up called Break Proof. We'll talk about the principles of what it means for you to climb your summit and achieve the life that you want. More Inside Sources coming up next. We'll be right back.
They say when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other, and that's so true when starting a positive journey. Like what I've experienced is I've lost over 60 pounds in 4.5 months with SOTA weight loss. Yeah, 60. When I finally committed to changing my health through SOTA, which, by the way, is spelled S-O-T-A and stands for state of the art, I suddenly felt freed. From day one, I was no longer embarrassed about how my body looked, and I started resisting that urge to cover or camouflage it like anyone who's been overweight knows what I'm talking about. Why? Because I knew it was going to work, and I wasn't going to look like this for much longer. And I don't. Someone else who knows what I'm talking about is Rosie, a fellow SOTA client like me. Rosie joined up with her mom, and now she's down 50 pounds.
I came back home from a 2-week trip, and everybody was like, in awe. They were like, wow, you look really great. You look terrific. You look completely different. I haven't turned into a new person, but I think I'm finding the best version of myself.
So make 2024 the year you finally let go of that weight for good. Go to SOTAweightloss.com, S-O-T-A weightloss.com. SOTA stands for, say it with me, state of the art.
The new year is here, and it's time to take advantage of Zerorez's best deal of the year. Carpets, tile, rugs, upholstery, basically every surface in your home can be Zeroresified. So it's time to call the cleaning pros at Zerorez. Don't forget your air ducts to help alleviate allergies or asthma. Enjoy less dust, lower energy bills, and your home will stay cleaner longer. Don't DIY it. Call Zerorez because you know it's safe and effective. Zerorez has a 4.8 rating on Google with over 3,300 reviews. The Zerorez Gotta Love It guarantee makes it easy to get what you pay for. Yeah, Zerorez absolutely stands behind every cleaning. Don't miss the best deal of the year. Get back to clean and get one room of carpet cleaning starting at just $25 per room by using promo code 25RM. Call Zerorez at 866-ZEROREZ or go online at Zerorez.com and say you want the station special. Zerorez. Spell it backward or forwards. It spells the same.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Don't let this warm weather fool you. We still got a lot of cold nights ahead of us. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you haven't scheduled your annual furnace tune-up yet, I got some good news for you. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Tuesday, January 30th, and mention you heard this ad, we'll give you $95 off and tune up your furnace for only $29. You won't hear this ad tomorrow, so call Any Hour Services right now to schedule. 801-443-7400. A furnace tune-up is the least expensive way to extend the life of your furnace and avoid unexpected breakdowns. And our technicians service all brands. 801-443-7400. If it's more convenient, go to anyhourservices.com and look for the red button that says Book Online. Schedule your $29 tune-up there. That's a $124 value for only $29 if you get a hold of Any Hour Services today. Call 801-443-7400. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
We are going to the elevated conversation today, to be sure. We're going to the summits, 7 summits on 7 continents by world record holder Jen Drummond, the first woman to summit the second highest peak on each of the 7 continents. She's an extraordinary individual. She's an author, a speaker. She has a podcast called Seek Your Next Summit. Most important, she has a book out, brand new, Breakproof, 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals. And Jen, as we continue this conversation, you and I were at an event last Friday with our good friend Scott Miller and Gray Miller as you launched your book. And one of the things that always pops up to me that we're missing in the world today is awe and wonder. Somebody said that, the world will never want for wonders, but it will want for wonder. And sometimes when we're feeling a little down and discouraged, or we're just kind of in that rut, sometimes just having that moment to feel awe, to feel wonder. And you've actually got an opportunity for people to do that from a base camp. Tell us about that.
Yeah, right. So sometimes life just gets overwhelming, or we get caught in our story and we feel like we're stuck. Whenever that happens for me, I have this video of the Milky Way galaxy going over base camp, and it is so beautiful, and it just reminds me how insignificant whatever's bothering me right now really is in the grand scheme of things. So for all of you listeners today, if you want to text the word Everest, EVEREST, to 33777, I will share that video with you that you can keep on your phone and refer back to at your convenience.
Oh, I love that. So again, you can just text Everest. Again, this is the Everest Base Camp. Just text that to 33777, and you'll have that help you get that awe and wonder back into your world. And Jen, as we continue on the conversation and these principles that were so crucial to your success in doing all of this, give us just a little sense. A lot of times we kind of go at things half-heartedly, or we kind of say, I'll kind of begin my weight loss journey to start the year for 3 days, and then we'll give up. You talk about how important it is to both embrace the imperfect starts, but to fully commit before you begin to climb.
Yeah. Right. So here's the deal. When we commit to the commitment, so like we're doing this thing, right? I'm getting this raise, or I'm climbing this mountain, or I'm keeping this marriage, whatever that looks like for you. Now you're not spending energy on whether that thing's going to be true or not. Now all of your energy can be redirected on how do I make this more fun, or more enjoyable, or more sustainable, or more ease in my life. And so when we finally truly commit to the commitment, we now open up freedom to explore, expand, and experience.
So important as you're going into that. Give us a sense from one of these summits in terms of that commitment and even the ability to deal with those imperfect starts along the way. A lot of times we hit that and we just want to turn tail and run, or go hide under the covers, or crawl under the desk.
Oh, friends, you have no idea my world of imperfect starts. So let's start with the idea that I'm flying to Russia prior to the Ukraine-Russia debacle, and I am going to climb Dik Tau, which is the second highest point in Europe. It's a very technical climb, so I'm curating all the perfect gear so it layers right, and I still remain dexterous in my limbs. So I land in Moscow, and I wait and wait and wait. And as I guess you can say, my bags did not show up. And so the guides met me at the carousel. And they're like, well, we need to go. I'm like, well, let's just wait a day or two. I'm sure they'll come. Like, we do not have that time because the weather window is now. So you either fly back home or you stay and we rent gear. I'm like, okay, we're renting gear. Let's go to the gear shop. So we go to the gear shop. We rent gear. I'm tying a backpack on my shoulders so it doesn't slide off. I have sleeves that I need to roll up. I have boots that don't fit. And I changed my mind. I'm like, okay, instead of summiting, we're going to get as far as we can and just collect as many data points as we can so that when I do come back, I'll be even better prepared.
Wow.
Well, we kept going and going and going. We summited. It was the ugliest summit ever. Like, I had to slide down sections of the mountain. I had to slither like a snake to stay out of electrical storms and all kinds of crazy in between. But here's the deal. No one asks what it looked like. They just ask, did you summit?
Yeah.
And so all of the crazy in between is just ours. It's not everybody's. Like, the summits are what we share. It's not always the journeys in between. And, you know, it's kind of fun. You're like, okay, this is a new curveball. How do we play to this to our advantage?
Yeah, so important. And we see that so often just in day-to-day. And it doesn't matter whether it's politics or business or sports or family. We get all of those things as we go through. And I think your ability to make that commit and stay with it. I always go back to that quote of until one truly commits, there's always hesitancy, that chance to draw back, ineffectiveness. But then once you commit, then providence moves too, and all kinds of things line up that otherwise wouldn't have happened. There's just that magic in that total commitment to the climb. And so as we come down the home stretch here, Jen, give us one last thing to take home from one of those summits, from one of those 7 continents, that is the metaphor for the day today, for those that are listening, that can maybe help them, maybe if they're even down in the valley today and the summit seems almost impossible to even start to climb.
Yeah. You know, I remember being on Mount Tyree in Antarctica. I'm the first American female, second female ever to summit that mountain. And I woke up on the side when it was time to go summit, and I looked out into the world. I thought, man, if I would have been born when my mom or grandma were born, I would not be here. This would not be an opportunity for me. And so I marched up that mountain with so much pride for humankind, for how far we've come, for what we've made possible, and for all these things that are now available for us to experience. And so wherever we are in the world, on our path, on our course, just know that you doing you is having ripple effects that you might not live to see the fruits of the labor, but it's happening because we're experiencing it ourselves from generations prior, and things we're doing today are setting up tomorrow for those we love and care for.
So important. Jen Drummond, world record holder, the first woman to summit the second highest peak in each of the 7 continents. She's a speaker and author, podcast, Seek Your Next Summit podcast. But